Very good morning to all of you. I was going through last 10 years question paper of various university and many of them they have asked one question on cervicofacial lymphadenopathy. So I decided to make a class on cervicofacial lymphadenopathy. This question in some of the question paper has come as 10-mark question, and in some of the question paper it has appeared as 5-mark question. Now coming to what is lymph. Lymph is a sort of fluid. This fluid is an interstitial fluid that is present between the cells. Quite often it is present in between the connective tissue. The lymph is produced because of the exudation of the fluid in the capillary bed. So if we take the part of this central part of this cardiovascular system, you have the arteries which divide into arterioles and then fine capillary. The capillary basically forms a bed into a very fine single walled endothelial cells, and these vessels they then progressively increase in size to form venules and then veins, and ultimately they drain in your heart. Now the major function of why this system is present in the body is for the easy diffusion of the nutrients which are required to interstitial cells. And these cells, after utilizing the nutrition, their metabolites are once again thrown into these interstitial cells. Now some of them they are taken up back by the this capillary bed, but most of them are not permitted so easily into the blood vessel. This is because if it is permitted immediately into the blood vessel, then through the uh, cardiovascular system, it will be immediately spread to the other organs. So what happens over here is all this interstitial fluid which is there, they are now drained into single lined cells, tubular structure, which are called as lymph capillaries. Now you can see over here lymph capillary. These are the tissue cells. They derive the nutrition from the interstitial fluid over here, and these metabolites and all they are then pushed into the interstitial fluid is pushed into the lymph cells. So these are the single cells of the lymphatic vessel. Now this most often occurs because of passive mechanism. There is no active mechanism involved over here. And the second important part, if you see the cardiovascular system, the pumping organ is heart. But in humans as such, lymphatic vessels in the lymph system does not have any pumping action. There is no heart for the movement of limbs. So these lymphatic fluids they rely on peristalsis, and the direction of the lymph fluid flow is because of presence of regular valves. So these are the valves, and these valves they ensure that the lymph fluid they follow a unidirectional force. And peristaltic motion, as you all know, rhythmic contraction of smooth muscle cells of the lymph capillaries, they will push the lymph towards the heart over there. Ultimately, all the lymphatic fluid they enter the heart by superior uh, thoracic duct into the heart, and once again it gets mixed up with your blood system, and then it is once again dissipated to the entire body. Central to this lymph system, there is lymph nodes. Now there are near about 600 lymph nodes which are present throughout your body. The purpose of lymph node is to keep a regular examining of the lymphatic fluid. because any fluid which has come into contact with your interstitial cells, uh, it can encounter bacteria, different types of bacteria, different types of fungi. It can encounter abnormal cells over there, or there can be some noxious or toxic metabolite, and all these things has to be checked before, at each and every step it has to be checked before it can be put back into the cardiovascular system, put back or mixed with the blood. So at regular places you have a um, gland sort of thing which are called as lymph nodes. These lymph nodes contain many type of cell, and uh, they provide optimal site for concentration of free or cell associated antigen and recirculating lymphocytes. So we have two types of lymphocytes, the T lymphocytes and B lymphocyte. T lymphocytes, they are called as thymus lymphocyte, and after a particular age, thymus it disappears, and these T lymphocytes which have matured in thymus, they occupy their respective places in the lymph nodes over there. Now, the function of T lymphocytes are to sensitization of immune response. So, what happens over here exactly is, if your interstitial fluid is having any sort of antigen, maybe a form of virus, bacteria, fungi, or some other foreign object, these circulating lymphocytes, the tissue lymphocytes, they present this to circulating lymphocyte, and the circulating lymphocytes, they bring to your lymph nodes, and here they present to the other lymphocytes. So in response to these foreign antigen, your T lymphocytes, they produce a template, and then they give command to B lymphocyte to convert into plasma cells and produce antibodies. This is in brief what I am telling, what happens exactly at lymph nodes. And that's why, in if you see, the lymph nodes are the center where there is a contact between B cells, T cells, and your macrophages. So macrophages, apart from eating the antigen, they are also responsible for presenting the antigen to T cells, and in turn T cells, they command B cells to convert into plasma cells and produce antibodies. Now, if histopathologically, you all must have gone through this in the first year. So this is a lymph node. The lymph node has got a capsule, and then you have germinal centers which are occupied or distributed by lymphocytes. You have granuloma over there. You have some lymphocytes which appear as epithelial cells, so they are called as epithelioid cells. And then you have some lymphocytes which have more than couple of nuclei which are called as giant cells, and also different types of giant cells. Now we need to understand over here, a lymph node can be enlarged because of two phenomena. One is an inflammatory process leading to enlargement of a lymph node, and the second reason is because of accumulation of cells. So the previous one is called as lymphadenitis, and a non-inflammatory enlargement of lymph node is called as lymphadenopathy. So adenitis is inflammation of lymph node, and adenopathy is mere enlargement of lymph node. So lymph nodes, they become palpable. Okay, prominently they become palpable in lymphadenopathy. Okay, so what are the various causes of lymphadenitis and lymphadenopathy? Most common cause is infectious disease, and in head and neck region, these include your infectious mononucleosis, infectious hepatitis, herpes simplex viral infection, herpes simplex 6, varicella zoster, which causes your herpes zoster and chickenpox, rubella, measles, adenovirus, and HIV virus. Now, HIV has got a very important stage, that is your third stage, persistent generalized lymphadenopathy. This is a very important diagnostic feature of HIV disease. Other causes like bacterial causes, you have any type of bacteria, which includes streptococci, staphylococci, cat scratch disease, brucellosis. You have plague. Plague is characterized by axillary lymph node enlargement. Then you have tuberculosis. You get matted lymph nodes over here. Then you have atypical mycobacterial infections, primary and secondary syphilis. Shorty lymph nodes are very characteristic in this disease. You have diphtheria and then leprosy. Fungal infection, usually they are histoplasmosis, coccidomycosis. These are not that common in India. Then you have chlamydial infections, which are lymphogranuloma, venereum, and tracheoma. Parasitic infection include toxoplasmosis, leishmaniasis, and filariasis. Immune diseases, most of them are autoimmune in origin, like your rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus erythematosus, dermatomyositis. You can have Sjogren's syndrome, once again an autoimmune disease, serum sickness, hypersensitivity type of reaction, which is then it can be associated with drug hypersensitivity. You can have primary biliary cirrhosis as one of the cause of lymph enlargement, then graft versus host disease. Other causes include malignant disease. Yes, they are notoriously known for painless lymph node enlargement, lymphadenopathy. Hematological, in that hematological one, you have Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's disease. Both are characterized by prominent lymph node enlargement. Acute and chronic lymphocytic leukemia, hairy cell leukemia, amyloidosis. You can have metastatic tumors in that primary sites or secondary sites. Lipid storage disorders, Gaucher's disease, Niemann-Pick disease, endocrine diseases like hyperthyroidism, and these are some of the other causes for lymph node enlargement. So by and large, this is a sort of, it's not a classification, but it is, I have categorized this as or probably it is enlisting all the diseases under certain categories so that you it is easy for you people to understand and remember. Now these are some of the head and neck lymph nodes. uh, you can have a look. This is a self-explanatory one. So these are some of the lymph node that you people should know, and whenever you are doing an extraoral examination of the patient, uh, you should try to see all these lymph node, all these regions should be palpated to identify if there is any enlarged lymph node. So clinical aspect point of view, I want to make it very clear that you people should not miss any of these palpatory findings of lymph node. Okay. Say for example, if you have a submandibular group of lymph node which are enlarged, then you are looking for the source of infection, which is from your premolar to molar region, or from your sides of your tongue or floor of the oral cavity. Say for example, if you have a submental lymph node which is enlarged, then probably the source of infection is from the tip of your tongue, anterior portion of the floor of the oral cavity, your lower incisor teeth, and the lower lip. So each of these lymph node is having a particular region from where the lymphatic fluid is getting drained, and any infection over that particular region, you have the subsequent level of lymph node which is enlarged. So these things are very small things. Many of us we tend to ignore it, but it is. I would rather say that you people should meticulously check because they give some or the other hint for the identification of source of infection. Now, this particular picture shows both the superficial and to certain extent deep cervical lymph nodes. Uh, of the 600 to 800 lymph nodes which are distributed in our body, you all will be surprised to know that there are, out of this, there are about 300 lymph nodes which are present in the neck region. So we have a lot of distribution of lymph nodes in head and neck region. And various scientists, physicians, they have classified lymph nodes, but the most common accepted classification is by American Academy of Otolaryngology. This was given in the year 2002, and they have divided this into level 1, which has submental and submandibular nodes. Level 2 is your upper jugular nodes. Level 3 is your middle jugular nodes. Level 4 is your lower jugular nodes. Level 5 is your this one behind one, that is next to trapezius. These are posterior triangle nodes, and you have the last one, level 6, which is your anterior compartment nodes. So these include usually your pretracheal, paratracheal, cricoid. All these lymph nodes are present. Now the division of the lymph nodes into all these levels have been done, especially keeping in mind the various neck dissections which are performed for the treatment of or surgical management of head and neck cancer. So you have radical neck dissection, you have modified radical neck dissection, you have a couple of some other neck dissection, and each of these neck dissection, certain levels of lymph nodes and are removed, are preserved, and so for that reason these lymph nodes have been categorized as levels of lymph nodes. So coming to clinical examination, we need to see this is especially pertaining to cervicofacial lymph node examination. We need to see the size of lymph nodes. Usually all of the lymph nodes are less than 1 centimeter. So if the size you are feeling more than 1 centimeter, then you are looking at some abnormal lymph node. We need to see whether any pain or tenderness is associated with your palpation. So rapidly expanding capsules, they stretch and thus they cause pain. So for example, if there is an infection or something like that, overnight the lymph node involvement causes stretching of the capsule. So then there is a pain. Consistency, if it is soft, then probably you are dealing with inflammatory or infectious disease. If it is stony hard, usually it is a metastasis to that particular lymph node. If it is firm and rubbery, it is usually suggestive of lymphomas. Matting is a group of lymph nodes that have enlarged and are very closely packed together. This is usually seen in tuberculosis, sarcoidosis, lymphogranuloma, or it can be because of metastatic carcinoma or lymphomas. We need to see the location of lymph node involvement. So, localized examination uh, where the lymph nodes are getting drained, say for example infection, skin lesion or tumors. Examine other lymph nodes, cervical lymph node, drain head and neck, and say for example if you have occipital group of lymph node, you need to check the scalp over there. A preauricular lymph node may be associated with ear infection. Submental and submandibular lymph node usually with mouth infection. Buccal group of lymph nodes like face, you need to examine teeth, which can be source of. Pictorial representation of the various superficial cervical lymph nodes and their respective draining areas. The preauricular group of lymph node which drain the scalp and the skin from the temporal region. Then the submandibular group of lymph node which drain the oral cavity. You have submental group of lymph node over here which is not shown. They drain from the anterior portion of the oral cavity. Then you have anterior cervical nodes which drain your larynx, tongue, oropharyngeal and anterior neck. So if you have this group of lymph nodes sometimes which are swollen, you're suspecting metastatic involvement. So we know that this group of lymph node is draining your tongue. So you need to check this one. Then you have posterior cervical nodes which drain the posterior portion of your scalp, neck and upper thoracic skin. You have the supraclavicular group of lymph nodes which drain the gastrointestinal tract, genitourinary tract, and pulmonary. This one. So so these are the different lymph nodes and the way from where the lymphatic fluids are drained. You will be able to identify the source or the foci of infection. Now, some of the lymph nodes in head and neck region, say for example, submandibular group of lymph node. So these are present along the underside of the jaw on either side. Then they drain the tongue, submandibular, uh, submaxillary gland over their lips, mouth, conjunctiva. Most common cause of enlargement include infections of head and neck, sinuses, ears, eyes, scalp, and pharynx. Submental lymph nodes, they are present just below the chin. They are also responsible for lymphatic drainage for lower lip, floor of the mouth, teeth, submental salivary gland, tip of tongue, skin of cheek, all these areas. And common cause is infectious mononucleosis, Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, toxoplasmosis, dental pathology such as periodontitis or periapical lesions, especially involving your uh, lower lip and incisor. Jugular lymph nodes, these are nodes that lie both on top of and beneath the sternocleidomastoid muscle and on either side of the neck, and they form the angle of the jaw to the top of the clavicle. They drain the latter half of tongue, tonsil, pinna, parotid, and mostly they are associated with pharyngitis, rubella, or any malignancy involving these organs. Posterior cervical nodes, they extend in line posterior to sternocleidomastoid muscle. They are in front of trapezius. They usually drain the scalp, neck, skin of arms and pectoralis, thorax and cervical and axillary nodes. Most common cause of enlargement is tuberculosis, lymphoma, head and neck malignancies. Suboccipital group of lymph nodes, they are located at the junction between the back of the head. They are chiefly concerned with lymphatic drainage of scalp and head, and the most common cause of enlargement is infection of these regions. Postauricular lymph nodes, they are located behind the ear, and they drain the external auditory meatus, pinna, and scalp. So common cause of enlargement is local infection. Similarly, we have preauricular lymph nodes. You can just note this down. Then you have got supraclavicular lymph nodes. You can pause this PowerPoint presentation and note it at a later time. Left supraclavicular lymph nodes. Once again, you can pause it and note it at a later time. Now, investigations which are needed for cases of lymphadenitis and lymphadenopathy. We need to start with complete blood count. We need to see for presence of any acute or chronic leukemia signs. Epstein-Barr virus and cytomegalovirus associated with mononucleosis, lymphoma with leukemic component, any pyogenic infection, there will be raise in neutrophils, PMNs and all. Immune cytopenias, example, systemic lupus erythematosus. We need to do serological studies, usually antibodies specific to Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, HIV, etc. Toxoplasma gondii, Brucella, anti-nuclear, anti-DNA. These counts are raised whenever you are suspecting autoimmune disease, especially lupus erythematosus. Chest X-rays need to be done to see whether there is involvement of pulmonary component by tuberculosis, histoplasmosis, sarcoidosis. These three are seen as granulomas which are present in the lungs. Then you have lymphomas, primary lung cancer, and metastatic cancer. These three are characterized by different radiolucencies in the lungs. Imaging techniques, we use ultrasound to identify whether it is a cystic or a solid enlargement of the lymph node. We do color Doppler ultrasound to find out the vascularity of the lymph node. We do CT scan and MRI scan to find out other groups of lymph nodes which are involved over there. In addition to that, these imaging techniques may also give insight to the source of infection, or say they also assist in identifying any primary or secondary tumors from which these lymph nodes are draining. Biopsy include fine needle aspiration biopsy. We have core needle aspiration biopsy and we have open biopsy. Now, whenever we undertake a fine needle aspiration biopsy or a core needle aspiration biopsy or an open biopsy of lymph nodes, we need to have one or two of these imaging techniques. Say, for example, an ultrasound will help us in guiding whether this particular lymph node is enlarged because of a solid tumor growth or solid cell infiltration, or it is because of pure fluid. So in case if it is because of fluid, we need to know the color Doppler ultrasound to know whether the fluid is a fluid something which is not blood. Okay, so if it is a color Doppler ultrasound shows that there is active involvement of artery and veins, and by mistake you have done a biopsy of the lymph node, and then there can be heavy bleeding encountered during the time of biopsy, which will be difficult to manage. Okay, so whenever you start with the biopsy, just ensure that you have undertaken at least one or two of these imaging techniques. Ultrasound and color Doppler ultrasound surprisingly are very routinely done imaging technique for lymph node, because ultrasounds and color ultrasounds are very good for superficial organs. So lymph nodes being superficial just beneath the skin, and an added advantage with ultrasound over here is it uses non-ionizing imaging technique. So that's why these are, and it is cheaply available. So these two imaging techniques are very routinely employed for identification of reason for lymph node enlargement. Okay, so fine needle aspiration biopsy is usually done using a 5 ml syringe and a 18 gauge or a 16 gauge needle. After the skin is scrubbed and sterile, we introduce this needle inside the lymph node, and we uh, give a negative aspiration over there to take out whatever liquid or whatever cells they come, and then we squish it back over the slide. We appropriately stain and we do histopathological examination. So that is your fine needle aspiration biopsy. Core needle aspiration biopsy, it takes a certain amount of tissue of the lymph node. The fine needle relies on the fluid, whereas core needle biopsy, it takes certain amount of tissue. The bore of the needle is little wider as compared to the one which is used in fine needle aspiration biopsy. Open biopsy is nothing but excisional biopsy. So quite often excisional biopsy is done because lymph nodes are just beneath the skin. So after local anesthesia infiltration, one incision is made along the creases of the skin, and we do a open biopsy where we remove one or two group of lymph nodes over there, and we give a normal stitching over there, and we do histopathological. Okay, so these are some of the other imaging modalities where we see involvement of lymph node over there. This is your MRI, which shows, sorry, this is our CT over here, and then you have certain lymph groups of lymph nodes which are enlarged and which are easily seen. So this is an MRI over here. The tissue is highlighted because white because of accumulation of inflammatory fluid. So treatment, this is the last slide. we try to find the underlying cause. Uh, Usually it is infectious in origin, so we give antibiotics, appropriate antibiotics is given, and glucocorticoids should be avoided initially, because in case if the lymph node enlargement is because of leukemia and lymphoma, if you go back to your pharmacology, you will find that glucocorticoids are used in the treatment of leukemia and lymphomas. So these are immature cells which are very sensitive to glucocorticoids, and administration of glucocorticoids will immediately kill the cell. You will not be able to identify the actual reason why the lymph nodes were enlarged. At the same time, glucocorticoids, they contribute in delayed healing and activation of underlying infections. So infections do aggravate because of immune suppression which is associated with glucocorticoids. Remaining treatment modality is what you get in your investigation, the type of disease. As per that appropriate management protocol, if it is taken, that is sufficient enough for curing the cervicofacial lymphadenopathy. Thank you. So I hope this short presentation has answered to the question of cervicofacial lymphadenopathy. Uh, um, it is an important question, so keep in mind various points that need to be written for this question. Thank you.